Welcome to Black and Gold Digital Edition, a behind-the-scenes look at your Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hi, and welcome to Week 8 of our digital show. I'm Puskar alongside Mike Fenner and Kent Urbanski. And gentlemen, Pittsburgh Steelers, the only team left in the National Football League that is undefeated. What a huge victory they got in Nashville. Kent, I'm going to start with you. Just the way they played. Great start to the first half, a little dicey in the second half, but that run defense was outstanding against Derrick Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. They went in to do that, and I thought mission accomplished, except for in the second half. They allowed them to get right back into using Derrick Henry, and they kind of got gassed at the end and almost gave it away. But now I think the 72 Dolphins, they're on watch now, right? With the Steelers being 6-0, we'll see if that carries on into this game against Baltimore.
Well, and I kind of laugh about that, but when you take a look at the Steelers' schedule, I mean, once they get through Baltimore, they do have Baltimore later on in Thanksgiving time, but this schedule is pretty soft at the flirtation of going undefeated. It is possible. Let's just pump the brakes, though, 1 week at a time. Mike, just a great performance in Nashville. The Steelers really coming through. But the tale of two halves, it's been a concern. They put it together against Cleveland all 4 quarters, but for a majority of this season, it's been one half and then just not putting it together in the second half.
Yeah, 2 totally different halves, as you said. And the way they started the game, you had to be encouraged because they go 16 plays, they go 75 yards, and they take up 9 minutes and 18 seconds to score a touchdown. And then they turn around and they force Tennessee to go 3 and out. They give up 1 yard in the entire quarter, and they possess the ball for almost the entire first quarter. I mean, that to me was a statement, the way that they just executed that drive, designed everything. They went out and did it, and I thought their offense had just as much to do with stopping Derrick Henry and containing him and holding him to 75 yards rushing as what the defense did, because you soak up the ball and you get that 14-0 lead, it starts to take him out of the game plan on the other side of the ball. They've got to kind of play catch-up, throw the ball, and go with some of their scat backs to try and get down the field by throwing it vertically. So that was a huge factor, I think, was the way they started off the game offensively, that first possession, just completely using that clock to their advantage.
In which I give Tannehill some credit there, because in the second half he came out, using that play action, going up over the top of the linebackers and beating them that way, and not having to use Henry until they started to wear that defense down a little bit, and then they started to use them a little bit, and I think they just ran out of time. I think they gained the momentum in that game, and if they go into overtime, I think Tennessee has the momentum. I think the Steelers might have lost that one.
And Ken, just talk about this receiving core. We've really harped on it the last couple of weeks, but here we go again, where Deontay Johnson coming out and having a great performance, and it just seems like each and every week there's just a different receiver stepping up for the Steelers, and it possibly could be just a matchup situation where guys are getting double coverage and allows someone else to have a big game.
Boy, was Johnson impressive in that game right from the start too, and he kind of showed flashes a little bit of somebody we like to call AB, but.
Who?
Exactly. Yeah, he was really good in that game early, and you didn't really see what I think Chase Claypool came out of that game with negative couple yards in that game. So he was. I don't know whether I didn't really look at it real hard, but whether they were doubling him up and leaving guys open to use. But I thought James Conner ran really hard, really effective, and. Eric Ebron stepped up too, made some clutch catches, as did Juju.
Well, guys, taking a look at the schedule, the Steelers are in the midst of a 3-game road trip. It started in Tennessee. It's going to continue in Baltimore. Then they're going to finish up in Dallas. And on paper, you would have thought, hey, if they can get maybe 2 out of those 3 victories, and yet here we are, first road trip out of this sequence, and they've already got that first victory. How huge is this matchup with Baltimore? Not only is it a divisional game and for first place, but to keep this momentum going, Mike.
Yeah, it's big, and I think one of the underrated challenges they're going to have this week that they have to look out for is stopping a guy like Marquise Hollywood Brown. They already took care of Dollywood Brown with A.J. Brown. Well, they might not have taken care of him. He had 153 yards and a touchdown, but that's the next challenge is Hollywood after Dollywood. So he's going to be a big factor in this game, the passing game. And Mark Andrews, the tight end, that was a spot that Tennessee did not take advantage of this past week with Jonnu Smith and Anthony Ferkser both really quiet, despite Devin Bush not playing in his first game with the torn ACL. Robert Spillane played well, and the way that they played coverage was critical. But Mark Andrews is a matchup nightmare too. He's emerging as one of the better tight ends in this league, and Baltimore likes to implore a couple different tight end options. So I think he's going to be deploy a couple different tight end options. He's going to be a huge factor in this game, I think, against the Steelers defense.
Especially in the red zone, I think he's a tough matchup there. Who do you put on him, you know? And then you have Minka, you know, who was kind of brought in to cover guys like that. But he's been missing a lot of tackles lately. That kind of worries me. After the big game he had against the Browns down there in Tennessee, he missed some key tackles that gave up some big yards and a touchdown to Browns. So, yeah, I'm looking for that matchup against Baltimore with the tight end Andrews to be a really good one to watch.
And don't count on picking up 13 third downs like they did this past week, because they're not going to be facing the worst third down defense in maybe the history of football again this week, like the Ravens will have. I mean, oh my gosh.
But I like how aggressive they were on third down. They were throwing the ball down the field on third, you know, some big plays, pass plays, 3rd and 14s, and 3rd and longer than that even, and picking those up. So, yeah, you're right, Mike.
He's been getting rid of the ball so quickly, too, Ben Roethlisberger. It's like an average of like 2.5 seconds that they're getting rid of the ball. That quick game has been impressive to see this year. They've kind of really changed the offense around to that, and just you know, getting the ball out quickly, not taking sacks, and letting the playmakers make those plays.
Guys, there's so many great rivalries, not only in the National Football League, but across the sports spectrum. Where do you rank this rivalry? I personally think it's one of the best, if not the best, over the last 20 years.
Yeah, no doubt. If you look at the matchups over the years and the point differential and the wins, it's pretty low. I don't know exactly what all the statistics are on that, but a lot of those games are decided by 7 points, 3 points, and the last one that they played down in Baltimore, I'm going to wash that one because you had backups, a lot of backups for the Steelers, and even Baltimore was playing backups.
Backups to the backups?
Backups to the backups. And that was a miserable game. It rained on the way down there. It rained walking into the stadium. It rained in the stadium. It rained when I walked out of the stadium. So it was a torrential mess from the beginning to end. And the Steelers really didn't have a chance in that game. The game before that in Pittsburgh, that came down to a fumble on with Juju Smith-Schuster that cost them that game. I'm looking for a similar type of game this time around.
Mike, what about you?
This rivalry is probably one of the best, if not the best, in the last 20 years, because it's not your classic, NFC East. You're not talking Washington, Dallas, or the Eagles and the Cowboys and stuff like that. But in terms of, like Kent said, you said, and the close games, these two teams are bitter rivals. There's a lot of history between these two teams. I would probably put this as the best rivalry going in the NFL in the last 2 decades between these two teams.
Yeah, it certainly has come down to a division championship between these two. Only the Cincinnati Bengals have won 4 division titles in the span of that 20 years, just about. So it has really come down to these two teams. All right, guys, let's just button this show up with our keys to the game. How do you see this thing playing out? Kent, we'll start with you.
Well, I think Ben has to be good, and he can't throw and turn the ball over. So if the Steelers can run the ball, have some balance, and you utilize that short passing game that you talked about that they used in Tennessee, then I think it'll even things out. I think advantage goes to Baltimore, being that it's home, not going to be a full stadium, which is kind of balances and evens that out a little bit. But it's whoever's going to win that turnover battle. It's cliche-ish when you say that, and a lot of games can be said that, but for this game in particular, because they are so physical, turnovers are going to be really important. Who wins that turnover battle?
To me, I think it's 2 things. It's a fast start and it's field position. I think those are critical because this Baltimore team, while they're explosive on offense, they are one of the few teams in the league that you do not want to be down early if you're Baltimore. If they're down a touchdown or 2, they start to get out of their element. They start to get out of their comfort zone in terms of the way they call plays and do things. And I think field position, make the Ravens drive the length of the field. Make them go 90 yards. Make them go 85 yards. I think field position and special teams, kick coverage, punt coverage, it sounds like a ridiculous detail to go into, but I really think these two teams are pretty much evenly matched. So you've got to find something that you can hold your hat on to separate yourself from the other team. I think that's going to be a big key for Pittsburgh.
To stop Lamar Jackson. And I know his numbers are down from last year, but he's still a little bit of a different type of quarterback than what they've seen. And he's so mobile, can make plays with his feet, so you got to contain him.
All right, guys. As always, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. So for Mike Fenner and Kent Urbanski, I'm Jay Puskar. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, take care.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week for Black and Gold Digital Edition.